You've been told to stock up before. You've heard the warnings, the alerts, the vague shortages ahead, clips that never quite land. This one is different, and here's why. Two very different institutions, FEMA and the USDA, are quietly pointing at the same window on the calendar, and that window closes September 1st. When two agencies that almost never coordinate on grocery-level messaging start converging on the same date, it isn't hype, it's arithmetic. And most households are going to miss it because the shortages don't announce themselves. They arrive on the shelf as a price tag, a smaller package, or an empty hook where the product used to hang. Before we get into the countdown, the item at number 1 isn't the one you're expecting. It isn't rice. It isn't bottled water. It's something almost every household already has in the pantry right now, in the wrong form, and won't realize the mistake until the third week without power. We're counting down all 13 grocery items you want secured before September 1st. And I want you to pay attention to how they connect, because this isn't a list. It's a system. Number 13, canned tomatoes. Most people think of canned tomatoes as a pantry filler, something you grab for pasta night. That's the assumption we need to break first. Canned tomatoes are one of the highest acid, highest vitamin C shelf-stable foods on the average grocery aisle, and that matters more than people realize. The USDA tracks tomato processing tonnage on a rolling monthly basis, and the 2026 pack has come in roughly 14% below the 5-year average, driven by heat stress in California's Central Valley, where more than 90% of the country's processing tomatoes are grown. Here's the part most guides skip. It isn't the growing season that's the bottleneck. It's the canning window. Processors have a narrow 90-day run from late July into October, and any disruption inside that window compounds silently for the next 12 months. What most people don't catch is that a 14% pack shortage doesn't show up as empty shelves in August. It shows up as a 1/29s can, becoming a 2/19 can in February, quietly, without a headline. Buy 2 flats of whole peeled and 2 flats of crushed. Store them off concrete, off the floor, on a shelf, in a spot that stays under 75 degrees. That's your acid, your vitamin C, and your flavor base for the next 18 months. Number 12, powdered milk. Most preppers stock powdered milk and then never rotate it, and that's the mistake. Non-fat dry milk, stored properly, sealed, cool, dark, holds its nutritional profile for roughly 20 years, according to shelf life studies, referenced by the Red Cross and university extension programs. But here's the mechanism nobody talks about. The fat-soluble vitamins in fortified powdered milk, A and D, the ones your body stores and uses slowly, degrade faster than the protein does. That means the calories stay, the vitamins fade. In a stretch where fresh dairy is unavailable for weeks, that vitamin gap quietly adds up, especially for children and older adults whose calcium absorption is already compromised. Buy the nitrogen-flushed, foil pouch variety, not the cardboard box off the grocery shelf. 2 number 10 cans per adult in the household covers roughly 6 months of light use. And older adults, anyone over 65, should be prioritizing this one because bone density loss during any period of nutritional disruption is one of those things that doesn't reverse cleanly once it starts. Number 11, iodized salt. This is where the label versus reality gap gets uncomfortable. You look at a canister of table salt and assume salt is salt. It isn't. The iodine added to iodized salt, the trace mineral your thyroid needs to function, evaporates, slowly but measurably. Studies from the WHO on iodine fortification programs show measurable iodine loss within 12 months of opening, faster in humid climates. In a stretch where seafood, dairy, and iodized commercial baked goods become scarce or expensive, that shortfall compounds without anyone noticing until fatigue and cognitive fog show up weeks later. Here's what most people don't realize. The cheap blue canister on the bottom shelf is fine. You don't need pink Himalayan anything. What you need is quantity and rotation. 4 pounds per person per year. Sealed in the original container inside a Mylar bag with a desiccant. That's your seasoning, your preservation medium for meat curing, and your thyroid insurance, all for under $12. Number 10, dried beans. Everyone stocks beans. Almost nobody stocks them correctly. The USDA and multiple university food science programs have published on this for decades. Dried beans stored above 75 degrees or in fluctuating humidity develop what's called hard shell, where the seed coat becomes impermeable to water. You can boil them for 6 hours and they still won't soften. That's not a myth, that's a documented physiological change in the bean itself. And it happens in roughly 18 to 24 months in a warm garage. Here's the twist. This is the same gap we saw with powdered milk. The food is technically still there, but the usable nutrition quietly walks away. Store beans in Mylar, oxygen absorber, cool closet, not the garage. Pinto, black and navy, 20 pounds each per adult. And rotate the oldest bag into weekly meals now, so you know your storage is actually working before you need it to. Number 9. Cooking oil. This is one of the sneakiest items on the list, because it's the one that fails first without anyone noticing. Vegetable oils oxidize. That's the mechanism. Exposure to oxygen, light and heat breaks the fatty acid chains and produces rancidity, which isn't just a taste problem, it's a nutritional and digestive one. The industry standard shelf life on a sealed bottle of vegetable oil is about 18 to 24 months, but the USDA notes that once opened, quality declines noticeably inside 90 days. Global oilseed markets have been volatile through 2025 and into 2026, with palm and soybean oil trading in ranges we haven't seen since the early 2020s. Here's what most guides get wrong. They tell you to stock gallons of vegetable oil. Don't. Stock coconut oil and clarified butter, ghee, instead. Both are saturated, both resist oxidation, both hold for 2+ years unopened without refrigeration. 2 quarts of coconut oil, 2 quarts of ghee per adult. That's your calories, your cooking medium, and your fat-soluble vitamin carrier. Remember, A, D, E, and K need fat to absorb properly, which is the part that comes back to bite you if you skip this item. If this has been useful so far, a like genuinely helps more people find this. Only if you feel it's earned one. No pressure. Let's keep going. Number 8, honey. Real honey, not the plastic bear from the discount aisle, which is often cut with corn syrup or rice syrup and mislabeled. Independent testing by food integrity researchers has consistently found that a significant portion of retail honey sold in the US fails authenticity testing, meaning it isn't what the label claims. Here's the mechanism that makes real honey extraordinary. Its water content is below 18%, its pH is around 3.9, and it contains hydrogen peroxide-producing enzymes from the bees themselves. That combination makes it functionally immortal. Archaeologists have opened Egyptian tombs and found honey still edible after 3,000 years. That isn't marketing. That's chemistry. Buy from a local apiary or a source that lists a single country of origin and a beekeeper's name. 5 pounds per adult, in glass, and it stores indefinitely on a shelf. It's your sweetener, your wound dressing in a pinch. And here's the detail almost nobody talks about. It's a morale food. Which brings us to something we need to name. Food storage researchers call it appetite fatigue. It's the documented phenomenon where humans eating the same limited rotation of stored food for more than 2 to 3 weeks begin to eat less, even when calories are available. It isn't willpower. It's a physiological response to monotony. Older adults and young children are the most vulnerable. They're the first to stop eating. That's why honey, spices, and the item at number 7 matter more than their calorie content suggests. Number 7, coffee and tea. I know, it feels like a luxury item on a survival list. It isn't. Caffeine is the most widely used functional compound on Earth, and abrupt withdrawal from a daily habit produces measurable headaches, cognitive slowdown, and mood disruption for 3 to 5 days. In a stretch where you need to think clearly, negotiate with neighbors, drive on unfamiliar routes, or make decisions under stress, that is the last thing you want happening to the adults in your household. Global coffee markets have been under significant pressure through 2025 and into 2026. Brazilian and Vietnamese production have both come in below trend, and the futures market is reflecting it. Vacuum-sealed whole beans hold for about 2 years in a cool pantry, ground coffee about half that. Instant coffee, freeze-dried, holds for 20+ years. Buy 2 large jars of quality instant, plus a pound of whole beans for the near term. Loose-leaf black tea, sealed, holds for 5+ years and gives you a caffeine backup that doesn't require any preparation beyond hot water. This is your cognitive function and your morale in the same jar. Which of these items on the list have you never actually considered stocking? Drop it in the comments. It genuinely helps me know what to cover in the next one, and I read every comment that comes in. Number 6. Oats. Rolled oats specifically, not instant packets. The mechanism here is a soluble fiber called beta-glucan, a compound that binds to cholesterol in the digestive tract and slows glucose absorption, which matters enormously in a stretch where fresh produce and lean protein are scarce and pantry meals lean carb heavy. The CDC and multiple cardiovascular research bodies have documented beta-glucan's effect on blood lipid profiles for over 2 decades. Here's the twist. Instant oat packets, the flavored single-serve kind, have most of the beta-glucan structure broken down by processing, plus roughly 12 grams of added sugar per packet. You're paying more for less nutrition. Rolled oats, stored in mylar with an oxygen absorber, hold for 25+ years, 20 pounds per adult. That's breakfast. That's a thickener for soup. That's a base for bread if the yeast holds. And it's one of the few pantry staples that meaningfully supports cardiovascular health during a long stretch of shelf-stable eating. For older adults especially, this one matters. Number 5. Canned fish. Sardines, mackerel, and pink salmon, specifically, not tuna. Here's why. Tuna sits high on the food chain and accumulates mercury, which is why the FDA publishes consumption limits on it, particularly for pregnant women and young children. Sardines and mackerel are low on the food chain. They're loaded with omega-3 fatty acids. They contain edible bones, meaning real bioavailable calcium, and they hold for 4 to 5 years in the can. This is the same asymmetry we keep circling back to. The cheap item on the bottom shelf is nutritionally superior to the expensive 1-2 shelves up, and most people never notice. Global fisheries have been under real pressure. The WHO and FAO have both flagged declining wild catch tonnage year over year, and aquaculture can only fill so much of that gap. 12 cans of sardines and 12 cans of pink salmon per adult. That's your complete protein, meaning all essential amino acids in one food, your omega-3s for brain and cardiovascular function, and your calcium in a can that stores flat on a shelf. Number 4. Hard cheese and shelf-stable dairy. Most people hear shelf-stable dairy and think powdered milk, which we already covered. This is different. Aged hard cheeses, Parmesan, aged Gouda, Pecorino, waxed and stored properly, hold for 6 months to a year at cool room temperature, and considerably longer refrigerated. The waxing process, done for centuries in European cheese caves, creates an anaerobic barrier that prevents mold while allowing the cheese to continue aging. Add to that shelf-stable UHT milk in the Tetra Pak cartons, ultra-high temperature pasteurized, sealed, unopened for 6 to 9 months without refrigeration. Here's what most people don't realize. UHT milk is the standard in most of Europe. Americans treat it as strange, but it's the same milk, processed at a slightly higher temperature. Buy 6 liters of UHT whole milk per adult, plus a 2-pound wedge of waxed Parmesan. That's your dairy calcium, your fat, and, coming back to appetite fatigue, that's real cheese on a real cracker after 2 weeks of beans and rice, which is the difference between eating enough calories to function and slowly under-eating without noticing. Number 3. Multivitamins and vitamin D3. Not a food, but on the shelf next to them at the grocery store, and structurally essential. Here's the mechanism. Even a well-planned food storage rotation will run short on a handful of specific micronutrients. Vitamin C after fresh produce runs out, vitamin D without regular sun exposure, B12 without regular meat and dairy, and sometimes iron for menstruating women. The CDC has published for years on the prevalence of vitamin D insufficiency in the general U.S. population. Estimates in the range of 40% of adults, higher in older adults and in northern latitudes during winter. A basic daily multivitamin plus a separate 2000 IU vitamin D3 covers the gaps that stored food will inevitably leave. Buy a 12-month supply per person. Store in the original sealed bottle in a cool, dark place. The label date is conservative. Most vitamins retain 80+% potency for 1 to 2 years past the printed date if stored properly. This is your insurance against the invisible malnutrition that compounds without anyone noticing until fatigue, immune weakness, or bone loss show up months later. Number 2. Yeast and baking soda. 2 items. Same category. The leavening agents that turn stored flour and grain into actual bread. Here's the part most preparedness content skips entirely. You can have 500 pounds of wheat in the basement and without yeast or baking soda, you can produce flat crackers and porridge. That's it. Instant dry yeast, vacuum sealed and refrigerated, holds active for 2 years. Frozen, it holds for 4+. Baking soda, sealed, holds indefinitely. It's a mined mineral, sodium bicarbonate, chemically stable for decades. The FEMA family preparedness guidance has quietly listed leavening agents in its extended food storage recommendations for years. And almost nobody notices because it's buried 3 pages in. Buy 1 pound of instant yeast, vacuum sealed, and split it into 4-ounce packets in your freezer. Buy a 5-pound bag of baking soda and decant it into a sealed glass jar. That's fresh bread every week for a year on stored wheat. And it's the difference between food storage that keeps you fed and food storage that keeps you human. And that's the through line. Honey, coffee, cheese, fresh bread. None of those are calories on a spreadsheet. They're morale. They're the reason people actually eat what they've stored, instead of quietly consuming 400 calories a day and slowly losing weight without understanding why. Number 1, and this is the one almost every household has in the wrong form right now. Water purification tablets or a gravity-fed ceramic water filter. And here's why this is the climax, not water itself. Everyone knows to store water. What almost nobody thinks through is the arithmetic. The Red Cross recommends 1 gallon per person per day for drinking and basic hygiene. A family of 4 for 2 weeks is 56 gallons. That's roughly 7 of the big blue camping jugs, stacked, taking up half a closet. Most households store 2 or 3, which means by day 4 or 5, you are drinking from whatever water is available. A rain barrel, a neighbor's pool, a creek 2 blocks over, the water heater tank in the garage. And here's the mechanism that turns this from an inconvenience into an emergency. Waterborne pathogens, Giardia, Cryptosporidium, E. coli, norovirus, do not announce themselves in taste, smell, or clarity. Clear water from a suburban creek can hospitalize an adult inside 72 hours and can kill a young child or an older adult inside a week. The CDC tracks waterborne illness outbreaks in the US every year, and the pattern is consistent. The vast majority of severe cases come from water people believed was safe. Water purification tablets, chlorine dioxide or iodine, cost about $15 for a bottle that treats 100 gallons. A gravity-fed ceramic filter, the countertop kind used in international aid work, costs about $250 and produces safe drinking water from any freshwater source, effectively unlimited, for 5 to 10 years. This is the item that isn't food, that sits in a category by itself, and that determines whether every other item on this list actually matters. Because you can have every calorie, every vitamin, every wedge of parmesan and jar of honey. And if you spend a week drinking contaminated water, none of it saves you. This is the foundation everything else rests on. And it's the one item where the cheap version, a bottle of tablets from the camping aisle, is functionally as good as the expensive version for a 2 to 4 week stretch. Buy both. Tablets for portability, ceramic filter for the long haul. If you buy nothing else on this list before September 1st, buy this. Now look at what we've actually built here. Because it isn't a shopping list. Look at the shape. Tomatoes, honey, and salt handle preservation and flavor. Beans, oats, and canned fish handle protein, fiber, and complete nutrition. Powdered milk and hard cheese handle calcium and long-cycle dairy. Coffee, tea, and honey handle morale and cognitive function, the appetite fatigue defense. Vitamins and D3 handle the invisible micronutrient gaps. Yeast and baking soda handle the transformation of raw grain into real food. And water purification underwrites all of it. That's not 13 items. That's a small, deliberate system, and every piece connects to at least 2 others. Pull one out, and something else stops working. That's why the September 1st window matters. Not because any single item disappears overnight, but because the system's redundancy erodes quietly, one price hike and one out of stock at a time, until the household that waited is trying to buy the last 3 pieces in a market where everyone else finally noticed. Households that have this quietly assembled don't panic when the alerts come. They already solved it months ago when the aisles were full and the prices were flat. This isn't fear. This is arithmetic, biology, and a supply chain that takes years to rebuild after weeks of disruption. Test it before you need it. Cook a full week of meals out of what's on your shelf right now, using only what you'd have in a real stretch. No fresh produce, no takeout, no store run. Whatever you run out of by Wednesday is the gap you go fill before September 1st. So here's what I want to know, and I mean it. Of the 13 we just covered, which one caught you off guard? Not the one you already stock, but the one you never would have thought of on your own. Drop it in the comments. I read every single one, and it genuinely shapes what I cover next.